Welcome back to Let's Talk About Scams. I'm your host, Joyce Petrowski, founder of R.O.S.E, Resources Outreach to Safeguard the Elderly. You can find more information and resources on our website at roseadvocacy.org. You can sign up for our monthly newsletters. We send one out via email and in the mail. You'll find our social media links there. And don't forget, you're going to want to click subscribe so you don't miss an episode of Let's Talk About Scams. So today I have a guest, Laurel, who is going to talk to us about the home health and home care. We're going to get the difference on what the differences are on that. And then she's going to go into a lot more detail on home care and some things to look out for, some things to consider when you are looking to hire somebody for in-home care. Laurel Smith has worked in the senior care industry for over 20 years. She did marketing, sales, installation of service of personal emergency response systems for ADT security services. She included in her role there was Quiet Care, which is a motion monitoring system used to monitor seniors as they move throughout their home to detect if there was a fall or no movement. She also worked as an inside and outside marketing and sales representative for an assisted living community. Laurel is currently the community liaison for family home care and is entering her 10th year. She is also serving her 3rd year as a board director of AZNHA, Arizona In-Home Care Association. So let's welcome Laurel. Well, hi, Laurel. Welcome. And thank you for coming and doing this podcast with me today.
Thank you for inviting me, Joyce. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about in-home care. I'm sure you have a lot of knowledge on that. So first question, what's the difference between home health and home care?
I'm so glad you asked that because there are many people that don't understand the differences. So when a company has home health in their name, generally speaking, that's medical. So it has to do with home health is prescribed by a doctor. That is things like physical therapy. A lot of people refer to it as PT, occupational therapy, OT, respiratory therapy, speech therapy, wound care, and all of those types of services require a physician's order for someone to receive those services. And then those are covered by medical insurances and Medicare and those kind of things. Home care, that's what the word says, is just care. And so those are activities of daily living that a company would provide in someone's home, wherever they call home, because sometimes home is in a retirement community. Sometimes home is with their children. Sometimes home is an apartment. Sometimes it's an assisted living building. So that activities of daily living are things that help people get through their day, like it's dressing, bathing, helping them ambulate, light housekeeping, meal prep, changing the bed linens, and then doing the laundry, because oftentimes that's a trip hazard as people get older. You know, the sheets are heavy and doing those kind of things. So it's activities to help them remain independent and safe in their home.
Home health, you said, was a doctor's order.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably have to have nurses on staff to do certain things.
It depends. So sometimes they're physical therapists, sometimes they're CNAs. Yeah, those kind of things. So it doesn't necessarily take a nurse. It all depends on what the need is of that patient. Those are provided in the home as well. Sometimes it's outpatient though. So someone would go to a little physical therapy location for those services. And again, that is something that, well, and a lot of times that follows an injury or a long illness. And so they need to get their strength back. So they have to have the PT and the OT, occupational therapy, to be able to function in their home again.
The people that are working for home care companies, they're not necessarily nurses. Would they have any specific like background training? Are they certified nursing assistants?
That all depends as well. It depends on the agency. But something that I would like to caution people about is there is a difference. Right now in Arizona, anybody can start a home care agency. They don't have to be honest or ethical. There's no regulation, so they can just, hire some teenager and send them into somebody's home to provide services without knowing their background, without doing a criminal background check, without knowing if they even have experience. So, is that older adult going to be at risk because of the lack of experience that that person might have going into the home? So in Arizona, there are two models right now, and one is using an agency that actually has caregivers as employees. The other model is hiring through a registry or looking somebody up online because there's a lot of different websites out there or places to go to find a caregiver. And so you look at their picture, you look at their background or their bio or what they like, and you're inviting this person into your home. And that can be very scary without knowing, has anybody done a background check on them? So, hiring someone like this, or companies that even have caregivers, but they're referred to as independent contractors, which is a 1099 model, meaning that they're not an employee. So, for your public, a W 2 employee is someone who is actually employed by the agency, that they take out taxes, unemployment insurance, workers' comp is paid on that employee, take out all the taxes and everything. But if you hire a private caregiver or someone from one of the other ones that I already mentioned, then that person receiving the services becomes the employer. And they are supposed to take out unemployment insurance, workers' comp, liability, state, federal, local taxes, and they don't realize it. And I'm happy to give you an example of a situation that happened that opened up a whole big ball of.
I think that would be great. It would help
Okay,
people understand it. Yeah.
so there are several different stories, but this is one that actually has some numbers attached to it so people can understand it. So there was a person that hired a caregiver to care for their spouse, and they worked there for a couple of years. Then the spouse passes away, the caregivers let go. Thank you, you've been wonderful, you've done a great job, we really appreciate it. And they were working there full time. So now they're unemployed. What am I going to do? So they go down to the unemployment office and they file for unemployment. And the person helping them said, I don't show any income for you. How can we pay you unemployment? And so, in brief, what happened is it went back to that person that hired that caregiver directly. It ended up costing that homeowner $10,000 because of penalties, late fees, and things that weren't paid, etc. So people think they're going to save money by hiring somebody privately for lower money, and they had no thought that this person was going to go and hire or file for unemployment.
It's just not something you think about, right?
No, no. So that's a prime example.
Wow. And I'm sure that happens, right?
It
Because
does.
the
Yep.
person giving the care is like, well, I'm no longer employed, so I should get unemployment for a while until I can find another job. That's kind of like the natural thought process. But then the person that hired them, or I should say hired in quotes, right? Because they're not an employee. Um, it was is all that's on their mind is I need somebody that can come in and care for my spouse because I either am not home enough to do it or I'm home but I can't do it, for whatever reason. And so that's their main concern. They're not thinking about, well, what if when they leave they claim unemployment, or what if, they get hurt? What if they slip and fall in my house? Then there's no workers comp. So now that person can file a claim against me to pay for their injury, and it has to go against my homeowner's policy.
That isn't enough to cover it because I heard of another case that caregiver then sued saying that they couldn't work or whatever. They ended up the people had to sell their house to pay for the settlement. So it's like I understand it. And there's some, now, with that being said, there are some good private caregivers out there, but they do it as a business, and they do pay their taxes and they do have training and that. So it's just
And
not,
they have their own workers' comp insurance
yeah,
and all of
exactly.
that.
And all that stuff needs to be discussed because people don't realize it ahead of time when they get into this, the ramifications that can happen.
Oh, exactly. Because, like we just said, they're not thinking about all that, right? They have the one goal is to get themselves or their loved one help to be able to recover from an injury, recover from an illness, whatever it is. That's their main goal. And so they're not even thinking about down the road. But, it's always good to talk about this because then people have the information. Is there some place that people can go to that they could maybe get like a list of questions that they could ask, like if they're interviewing different, whether it's a person or whether they're interviewing like a company for some in-home care, that there are questions that they can ask?
That's a great question. I don't know if the Arizona In-Home Care Association has that on their website or not. But they may have the, and I don't know. I don't know all the FAQs that are on there. But going through an association like AZNHA, AZNHA.org, um, which is an association that was started back in 2007 by family home care's owners, and a couple of other concerned people because they fought for legislation to become regulated and to no avail. So they started this association to bring regulation to an unregulated industry and to help safeguard our elders. So on that site, there are many companies that adhere to the guidelines that have been put in place. And people can find a list of caregiver companies. They can also, if they click on the button that says printable PDF, it will also have a column that shows Altex, ALTCS, or those kind of services, because not all home care agencies out there take Altex or government programs, because that is for low income or Arizona long term care insurance. And I hope I'm not getting ahead of maybe some questions you might have asked, but
No, because that was going to go right into my next question is, so somebody's looking, probably the best thing they can do is get on to AZNHA's website, which is AZN as in Nancy, HA.org, ORG, and they can kind of look down through the list of the different um, home care agencies that are members of AZNHA and then look and see, you know, if they take long-term care insurance, if they take Altex, if they take VA benefits. All, so that brings us into outside of just privately paying, just writing a check out of your personal checkbook each month or every 2 weeks, whatever it is for the care, and paying the agency. What other is there anything else? So we talked about a few of them that can kind of help pay for this.
yeah. So if someone is low income or they're afraid they're going to run out of money, they can only have a certain amount of assets. They can apply for Altex, Arizona Long Term Care Insurance policies. There may be affiliate members on the AZNHA site too that can help people with that. Um, it's very important to go to a reputable company that knows what they're doing. Also, if they are a veteran or the spouse of a veteran applying for VA aid and attendance, it's due to them. Again, there are criterias that surround that, but going right to the VA can be daunting. It can be frustrating. It can be a lot of work. There are accredited agents in the Valley that work nationwide that are accredited by the VA to do this paperwork on behalf of people.
And are there any of them that are affiliate members of AZNHA that might be listed there?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I do know that we're going to have a couple at our conference coming up in August. Um, but that's something that if they become affiliate members, then their information would be there.
Right. Or maybe somebody could send an email into AZNHA. I'm sure they have the info at aznaha.org that they could ask, if there's any. recommendation that AZNHA would have, or any affiliate member that would help VA.
Now, the website itself does show affiliate memberships, but I'm racking my brain right now to know if they're even on there. And the one is a brand new contact. So, but she's been doing VA accredited business for many, many years.
Okay. So it might take a little bit of time. I think the affiliate members are listed on there because I found myself on there because I'm an affiliate member of AZNHA. Yeah.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah.
So another way that people can pay is also long-term care insurance policies. So that's generally speaking for people that got into that years ago. So it's your things like Genworth, Bankers Life, MetLife, John Hancock, long-term care insurance policy that pay for home care services. Also, the Arizona Caregiver Coalition offers respite vouchers for family members so they can get a break, but it's with a limited yearly benefit. And that is also something that has to be applied for on their website.
Well, that's good to know that if family members are caring for their loved ones, that they could apply for that to get to. I'm guessing what that is then they give you the money to then pay for somebody to come in and relieve you.
I think it has to be paid ahead of time. And it's like a $600, $1,200, $2,400 voucher. And it's for different things. I don't work for them. I don't know. I don't know the details, but Arizona Caregiver Coalition.
Arizona Caregiver Coalition. Okay. We will get the websites for AZNHA, for Family Home Care, because Dawn, the owner of Family Home Care, is one of the founders of AZNHA. And then also for the Arizona Caregivers Coalition, we'll have those all in the show notes so people can look those up. And see, I always thought long-term care policies were more geared for like nursing homes and skilled nursing
Some are,
homes.
but the insurance company is going to save money if someone is getting services in their own home. And every insurance policy is different. So, it all depends on what they signed up for. Is there a rider to it? Is there some kind of a condition to it or whatever? So, I'd like to go back to something you brought up. Because when you were talking about having the private caregiver coming in the home, and if they quit, they go down for unemployment, or so there's another thing. It's like, what if they get sick? So, I want to kind of go over the things that are important for people to think about if they are thinking about hiring somebody. So, agency versus some kind of a registry or a private caregiver. Who is really liable? So, when you utilize an agency model, those that have caregiver employees, all of the following things are done by the agency. They find and hire the caregivers, they screen the caregivers for experience, they do criminal background checks, whether or not they have CPR and first aid training. They employ the caregiver, they directly pay the caregiver, they manage the schedule and monitor the performance of the caregivers. They pay and file reports. So state and federal payroll taxes on the caregivers. That includes Social Security, Medicare tax, federal unemployment. They also pay workers' compensation and insurance for in case of illness or injury, either one, while they are on the job. And they pay theft insurance to cover theft issues. And they provide a replacement caregiver if that caregiver gets sick or quits. So, and communication. So, how does the family member even know how well that caregiver is doing if it's just a private caregiver? Where do they put their notes? Where do they have a binder? Do they have a portal or anything like that? And these things are important. So, when someone's using a private caregiver registry, all of the points that I just mentioned are the responsibility of the consumer, and they become the employer. And the other issue is if they have a live-in and they want to fire them, do they have to evict them?
Or if they're only there for a certain amount of time, and the time's up, the person they're caring for is better and they don't need the care, do they have to evict them as well? Right, because they've invited them into the home, told them, "Here's your space," and that's a valid point.
And other things that people don't think about, another issue is, if number one, it's illegal to pay somebody under the table. It's done all the time, but it is illegal. And if the caregiver gets paid under the table, obviously no taxes are being taken out or paid. So, in addition to no money going towards Social Security, what happens when they are retirement age and they show no income?
Right. They don't have any Social Security paid.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Wow.
Important things to think about. And a lot of times, so a private caregiver, so I have heard of these situations too. So they have a private caregiver, and it's like, oh, my baby is sick, so can I bring my baby with me today? 2-year old, whatever, it's a petri dish. So it's, you're exposing a vulnerable adult to a child that can be carrying a lot of different things. If they were in daycare and now they can't go to daycare, so I'm going to bring them with me. Oh, and my boyfriend, he had to drive me here today, and he's just going to wait for me to be done. So can he just sit here in the room while I'm taking care of you? And then he goes down the hall to the restroom, and that's usually by the master bedroom where the valuables. So I hear about all these things.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I've actually heard of, some people that will specifically target retirement communities. They will get jobs within the retirement community, and then they start befriending, and it could be a male or female befriending a male or female who might have recently lost their spouse or their partner, or maybe it's been a while, but they're by themselves and they start befriending them. And then the next thing, what I heard, it was a man and it was a woman who then all of a sudden moved into his home, because she was going to care for him. Well, she finagled her way in and got him to turn the house deed over to her, put her on the bank accounts, a whole bunch of stuff. And he couldn't evict her. Right.
She
And
owns the
it,
house. Yeah, she's on the deed.
exactly, right, and she could have evicted him, right? But then she was basically had access to all of his money, and by the point by the time they talked to some independent person, and that independent person was trying to explain to them, you need to get her off your house, you need to, whatever. By that time, she's got him into this absolute trust, and he's just so emotionally spent and psychologically spent with this. It just seemed easier for him to just go along, right? To continue to go along with it. So, and I'm not saying that happens at all retirement communities and people need to be worried about that. It doesn't. I mean, this was just one case that I had heard about. And there are tons of retirement communities in Arizona, and they're all, really good. But these are things that you have to just be careful of is, whether it's somebody that works at that community or somebody out of the blue that, just all of a sudden wants to be your friend and they're trying to get in even closer, it's a whole romance scam thing coming up, right? Except it's happening in person and not over the computer. So you have to be very careful about that. And yeah, so have you heard of any other quote unquote scams that happen? Like, and I don't want to, but we are talking about home, whether it's home health or home care. Um, you know, um, Anybody that might have been trying to scam the people they were caring for. I mean, I guess it would happen a lot if they were a private caregiver, right?
More so.
Um,
Now, that's not to say that agencies haven't had problems, because I'm privy to a lot of information from a lot of different companies. I've read a lot of different articles in publications. And so yeah, they've had employees that have gotten into a sticky finger situation, or they play up to the person because they become close to the person they're caring for. So they talk about, baby needs new shoes, but it's really beyond that. It's, my baby needs medical help and whatever. And before you know it, that person is feeling really bad because this caregiver is caring for them, and so they want to help, so they're giving them money or something like that. These people that have crossed that line are let go from agencies, but the agency has insurance to take care of those situations, and they've had to right the wrong, as should be.
Right, right. It is, and I think there are. I think you and I talked once that this did happen. A lady caregiver, um, and it was not intentional. She wasn't doing it intentionally. She didn't realize that that was a line that she had crossed until she lost her job, and they had to explain why and all of that. But yeah, I mean, it is because yeah, I mean, it's there's a conflict of interest there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and this happens as well. Any reputable home care agency is going to have information in their agreement that you cannot hire that caregiver privately, because this happens to agencies too. They get used to their caregiver, they really want that caregiver, and the caregiver ends up quitting, but the person receiving care then says, I don't need care anymore. And then those people are caught commingling, and the caregiver is then providing services privately, because there's a penalty for that, there's a fee for that, and that caregiver is no longer covered under that agency's insurance. So it's, and people don't realize they, and there was one that I heard of, which might lend to the one that you started to mention about the caregiver that just kind of fell in love with this guy that she's taking care of. Is that the one you're referring to that I'd mentioned to you? So it's like I talk to a lot of different agencies, being on the board of AZNHA, and I hear some of these things, and yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Um, oh wow. So all right, we covered the difference. We had covered hiring and paying. The buyer beware. We covered, what's if you use a registry that has independent contractors or a private caregiver, how you could be the one stuck holding the bill for all of the taxes and insurance. Is there something that people can do to um, like protect themselves? Is it more of just asking the right questions, getting as much information?
Yes, and I'm glad you, because I was just going to go there. It's like we're on the same wavelength. So, some red flags for people to think about, um, and not being fooled into believing they're getting a caregiver as an employee when they're actually getting an independent contractor, are some of the following. So, if a home care agency wants the person receiving services to give one check to the company and another to the caregiver, two separate payments. I mean, that's a huge red flag. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me anyway, but that's a huge red flag, but some people operate that way. If you are just to pay the caregiver and not the company, that's a red flag. If a company is charging a price for services that is markedly less than caregiving companies in the area, that's a red flag. However, I have heard recently of some private caregivers charging as much, if not just under, what reputable home care agencies charge because they can get it. And then if a home care company tells you that they're licensed, don't be fooled, because there's no licensure in Arizona. There's no license to do business. So if they're saying that, it means they have a business license, and anybody can get that. So another way that they can protect themselves is get verification from what kind of home care company or private caregiver you are dealing with, by asking for copies of the company's or the person's workers' compensation insurance certificates for the caregivers, and insurance for caregiver theft issues. So they should have an insurance form that shows these things. And it's important to get a consumer disclosure statement that details if the home care company is an employer, a registry, or a person is a private caregiver, the responsibility that they will assume, if any, for the payment of wages, taxes, Social Security, overtime, workers' comp, liability insurance, insurance against theft, unemployment payments, and more.
So that's that consumer disclosure statement. Okay. Now, is that something that if a home care company is part of AZNHA, does AZNHA require them to give that statement out to all of their clients every year?
On an annual basis, yes, they do. And they have to provide that to AZNHA with their membership renewal as well.
Okay. All right. And then, so basically, AZNHA is really making sure that their members are adhering to best practices in the
Absolutely.
home health, in the home care industry.
Yep.
So they're like the watchdog.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. Very good. I think, wow, I was just looking through the pages here. I think we've covered everything,
Good. Good.
unless you're seeing something that I'm not. But yeah.
I,
So
I
that's
it's just consumer beware. It's like, and don't be fooled by the cuteness or the charmer personality. You've got to ask the hard questions. And I have heard for years that if someone hires a private caregiver, even when they go through an agency, if there's a personality disconnect, they don't want to hurt this person that's relying on them for income. They don't want to get a different caregiver. Sometimes they're frightened of ramifications. And so you're hiring a private caregiver. It's like, you know, how easy is it going to be to let them go if you don't care for them? If you're going through an agency, any reputable agency, again, is going to provide you a backup caregiver if something gets crossed, a boundary gets crossed, or there's a personality clash that happens or something. So,
personality clashes happen all the time. Not everybody gets along with everybody.
right, right. And I've heard the things about the live-ins, and they have to evict them, and it's like this can be all consuming for an elderly person that doesn't have the chutzpah to handle it, to deal with it, because they don't want to hurt somebody. And again, they're afraid for their safety or whatever.
Right, depending on the situation.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing all of this great information. If you can email me those links, I want to make sure I get them in the show notes,
Happy to do that.
so everybody has that. But yeah, thanks. And I hope a lot of people listen and get some. I'm sure they're going to get very valuable information. They're probably going to be like, "Wow, I never knew that. I never knew I should do that." But you know what? It's also, if they're not in Arizona, it's going to get them to maybe call their state and ask their state if they have regulations over home care agencies,
Right.
and start doing a lot more checking, which is really what everybody should do, right?
Yes, they
So,
should. They should. Yep.
all
I'm sure
right.
there's
Well,
a
thank
couple of
you.
things that we've missed, but if anybody has any questions, they can get a hold of AZNHA or whatever. And
Right. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Laurel.
thank you, Joyce. Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope people learn something.
I'm sure they will. That was a lot of information. We learned about the differences between home health and home care. And then we dove into a lot of information on home care. And that's having somebody care for you in your home that's non-medical. And the differences between working through a reputable in-home care company, or working through a service that would just have a list of independent contractors that you would be contracting with, or hiring a private caregiver. So there's a lot of things that you need to look at when you're looking for this type of care, because home care in Arizona is not regulated. So home care agencies are not licensed by the state of Arizona. Now that's where AZNHA comes in, though, Arizona In Home Care Association. They were started by Laurel's boss at Family Home Care, the founder of Family Home Care. Him and a few other people started Arizona In-Home Care Association to be the quote unquote watchdog on the in-home care companies. So they have a lot of members, and they hold those members to a high standard. They have disclosures that they have to send out to their clients on an annual basis, and they have to submit them to Arizona In-Home Care Association as well. That's part of their membership. So we're going to have the links to Family Home Care and Arizona In-Home Care Association. And then Laurel also mentioned the Caregiver Coalition association or agency. I don't remember which one it is, but we're going to have that link as well, because she mentioned that they'll do like respite vouchers to help like family members that are caring for a loved one, to help them get a break. So we'll have that information in the notes as well. So you're going to want to visit our website, roseadvocacy.org. You're going to find a lot of resources, our social media links. You can sign up for our monthly newsletter via email or mail, or you can do both. And don't forget, you're going to want to click on that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of Let's Talk About Scams. Until next time, thank you.